I am a remote worker. He was talking about it. I live in Kerr County, and Kerrville is the major city. Matter of fact, we have a lot in common, particularly with would be Cook County and Fannin County. Both Kerr County is about 50,000. One city dominates Kerrville, and then there's the rest of us that live out in the county. I am the president of the West Kerr County Chamber of Commerce, so I'm trying to do what I teach and put it into practice. I'm also a co-facilitator of a volunteer economic development group for the West Kerr County. And so our whole purpose is to develop the economic viability of the west part of the county. He was also asked a question about, again, the remote workers. The other thing we have a very unusual county, and I notice that maybe you guys may have some of that also. We're one of the few counties in Texas where the median income of the county is higher than the median income of the city. And people say, how can the median income in the county be higher than the median income of the city? Because usually the city dominates and the county doesn't. That's because our number one source of wealth is retirees. And the retirees live in the county. And so if you're looking for a great source of money, retirees are great. They don't have as much impact on the infrastructure. I look from my house. I live out in the county also. I look from my house, and there are people who have gates that are more expensive than my house is. And so you wonder, what did these people do for a living before they retired? Because, man, the kind of wealth that they see out there. And one of the things we did, because we know we're in a perfect position for remote workers, we're only about an hour from San Antonio and about 2 hours from Austin. Matter of fact, there's about almost 2.5 million people that live within a 2-hour of our county. And so we're looking at that. One of the things we actually did was look at things like internet. You talked about the infrastructure we need. We looked at the internet service, looked at the cell phone service, these kinds of things, what we needed to do for that county. But like most counties, when you talk about small, the backbone of our county and the backbone of your cities are the small businesses, and that's what I want to concentrate on today. I want to talk about the small businesses. And here's what I want to do. I want to talk to you about how your small businesses might fit into your communities. And by the way, I will make a comment right now. I'm going to give you a lot of information. No two communities are alike. Every community is different. And so what may work in my community and my county may not work in yours. What I have found over the years is you try to look and pick out those things that will work in your community. Just because you hear something great doesn't mean it's going to work where you are. So just remember, everybody's unique, and what I'm giving you is kind of an overview. So I want to also talk to you about what's the realistic value. Oftentimes you hear entrepreneurs are going to save our economy. No, they're not. We're going to talk about that. Have a realistic view. They are the backbone. But if you're counting on just nothing but entrepreneurs and small businesses to save your community, that's probably not going to happen. You need to have a realistic view of that. What does it take to be successful as an entrepreneur? We'll talk about some of those things. Building the ecosystem, and I know that's what y'all are more interested in here, is what do we need to do to have an ecosystem that supports your small businesses? I don't want to go that far. Go back. Identify the sources available to help you, and that's where I'm going to spend some of my time, is talk to you about some of the things that are out there that maybe you can employ in your community or county. And like I said, not every county is the same and not every community is the same, so you can pick the ones that fit you and ones that don't. I'm going to give you a little terminology too as we go through it. I think all of you know this. If you're going to build your economy, you do it in 3 ways. You start businesses, you grow the ones you have, or you attract some more businesses. Not everybody is capable of attracting, $17 billion chip manufacturing plant from Texas Instruments. I know my county, and particularly my little town is 1,500 people. I don't live in the town, but that's the town. It's the only other incorporated town in the county. There's two other little communities out there in the west part of the county. But we do have in our west part of our county, that's where the retirees live and that's where the deer hunting is. So that's the mainstay of our economy out there. But what's the whole purpose of doing this? Why do you want to build your economy anyway? And that's why I do what I do. Everything, I get paid huge amounts of money to be the president of West Kerr County Chamber, zero. I get huge amounts of money to be co-facilitator of the Economic Development Group, it's volunteer, zero. Why do you do it? Because we want, and I know you do, you want to increase the economic viability of your area. You'd like to see your citizens thrive, and you want to see them flourish. And that's the reason why we do it. And so the money that's generated, by the way, do you know business funds everything? There's not one thing in this country that business does not fund. Everybody tells me, well, what about government? Well, business funds government. Well, what about homeowner? Business funds them too, because they couldn't own that home without being either employed or owned. One of the two. Business funds everything. And so we want a viable business community in order to fund the growth of our community so we can have economic prosperity. That's the whole point. One other little thing you talked about, small. What's the role really of small businesses in your community? You may have heard the term before. There's something called primary jobs. Those are jobs that created, and the money that funds those jobs comes from outside the community. And then there's those jobs inside the community, which a lot of the small businesses do. Now, some of the small businesses, even in our county, in my community, are primary job creators. They create, the money funding them comes from outside the area. But by the way, again, our biggest source of outside money is retirement income. If you think about where that money's coming from, it's coming from outside the community through investments, retirement plans, Social Security. That's all coming from outside. And we realize that right up front. If we're going to, we love our retirees because that's where that money comes from, that outside money comes in from. What's the real role of small business? Small businesses have a tendency to hold the money in the community because money flows in. If you want your community to grow, more money has to flow in than flows out, right? It just makes simple. If you got more money coming in that's going out, your economy is growing. Well, money flows in from the primary jobs, and then it flows out where? If you're like us, and I can almost guarantee you somebody drives to Dallas to go shopping. It's just gone. Your money's gone. How long does it stay? I live in a little town of 1,500. Kerrville's only about 5 miles away. They get their paycheck and they head to Walmart in Kerrville. So how long did that money stay in my little community? Almost zero time out. So you want a vibrant small business community, particularly retail, to keep that money stuck in the community so you can at least keep it circulating for as long as you can. And for those of you in government, every time they spend it, there's another sales tax. The more longer you keep it, the more sales tax you get. And by the way, my county, the sales tax far exceeds ad valorem tax, particularly the city. The city is so small and there's no tax base. So their sales tax is actually, so if it wasn't for sales tax, we couldn't survive on that one. So just want to keep that in mind. Small businesses are vital to your community. If you don't have them, the economic viability is going to really suffer for your community. I put this great big difference because since I am an academic, I had to put a very lengthy definition of what an entrepreneur is. My definition of entrepreneur, and I'm going to boil it down, is anybody who starts a business. And the business doesn't even have to be a good idea, or it has to be a good idea, it doesn't have to be a new idea. I tell students, what is Amazon? It wasn't anything new. All they did was change the distribution channel. People have been, originally started as a bookseller. People have been selling books for centuries. What did Amazon do that was really innovative? Nothing. But where are they? So if you're thinking about, I've got to have all this creativity and innovation in my community in order to have vibrant small businesses, no, you don't. Most small businesses are just this ideas that are being added value to. In other words, the entrepreneur or the small business owner has found out a way to add more value to that business than what it was before. And that's what you're looking for. So when I'm thinking about my community and I want to encourage small businesses, what businesses do I want? Well, I wouldn't mind having some high-tech firms, but I can guarantee you in my little town of 1,500, there's not going to be any high-tech firms. I can already tell you that. But what we could have some high-tech remote workers. We could have some other things like that come in. But we're going to have just regular businesses. And so, like I said, some of them sell their products outside the area, so they're even primary job creators. So anybody who starts a business to me is an entrepreneur. So that's what we're doing. Anybody who wants to start a business, that's what I want. I don't care if they think it's going to be the next Amazon, really doesn't matter. If it just supports their family, that's fine with me. The small business, I'm just going to give you some ideas you may have never thought about before. The Small Business Administration says any business less than 500 employees is a small business. I don't know about you, but my county would kill for anything that had 500 employees in it. I'm trying to think if we even have a business outside normally the school system or government that has 500 employees in it. I don't think there's any business in the county, entire county, that has 500 employees. So what we ended up doing is we start breaking that down just a little bit. We have the self-employed, we have micro businesses, we have first stage businesses, second, third, and fourth stage businesses, and that's kind of to categorize them. So not every business is huge, and so if you don't have any of the 500 businesses in your community, 500 employee business in your community, you're not alone. There's a lot of us communities that don't have that kind of business. I want you to show you something though. As of 2021, there are 32.5 million small businesses in the United States. Businesses less than 500 employees. I want you to look at the number of big businesses that are out there. These are businesses with more than 500 employees. Look at that number. That's not a misprint. There are 32.5 million small businesses and a little over 20,000 that have more than 500 employees. Most people think that number would be a whole lot bigger than 20,000. One of the things we'll find out though, we need both. We need the small businesses and we need the big ones. Those 20,000 are critical to our economy. I know over the years, politicians always of all stripes seem to like to run down big businesses with big businesses taking over the world. If we didn't have them, we wouldn't have much economy. Because I'm going to show you some numbers here, and you're going to find out the power of those 20,000. Those 20,000 have a lot of power, even though small businesses have some power too, but not quite the power the big ones have. Small businesses make up, look at that, 99.9% of all businesses out there are small. That's less than 500. Just look at some of these stats. 99.7% of all employer firms are small. So if you want to know where the employees are working, they're working in the smaller businesses. But look at this next one. 43.5% of the gross domestic product is created by these 32 million businesses that are less than 500. Where's the rest of it come from? You know, you look at it, how much is left? You got about 44% being created by the small businesses. That means what? The rest is all being created by that 20,000. So don't underestimate the power of the 20,000. They do more than half of the gross domestic product of the United States. Small businesses make up 31.6% of all exporting firms. Who makes up the rest of them? That 20,000 out there. So you look at it, but that makes up 97.4% of all firms that export. They just don't export to the same amount as the big ones do. 40% approximately of the private sector payroll goes to small businesses. Where does the 60% go? To the big ones. That 20,000. Again, we don't want to run down the 20,000. They're important too, but the small ones are important also. We'll talk about what the small ones are good for in your community in just a few minutes. About half of the private sector employees work for small business. Where do the other half work? So the 32.5 million businesses employ about half the employees. The other are employed by the 20,000 companies that have more than 500 employees. Now, I'm not here to run down the small businesses. In my community, if we didn't have small businesses, we'd have no economy. But I just want you to, when you hear a politician run down the big ones, realize they're running down over half the economy. So, we need both. We need to support both the big ones and the little ones. Here are some realities. So when you're looking at it, 81% of all small businesses never employ anyone other than the owner. Most people think it's a lot more than that. No. So if you have 10 businesses, on the average, only 2 of them have an employee. The rest of them are all single employee, which would be the owner. Over half of them are home-based. What does that tell you already about most small businesses? What are they there for? What do they do in your community? They buy themselves a job, or at least what? A part of a job. How many people do you know that run a business? Maybe it's a husband, wife, one still works, one runs the business. Oftentimes, these are part-time incomes. Now, so when you're looking at the number of business, now, are they important? Yeah. A part-time income for a family can make a huge difference. If you run on down just a little bit, you'll see the average profit per small firm is about $15,000. So the average small business is what? Small. Never employs anyone, oftentimes home-based. It makes about $15,000. But if you think about it, that's about $1,000 a month of extra income coming into the family. That can make a significant difference. However, there are some businesses out there that make a lot of money who are small businesses. So don't let that's just the average. Look at some of the other thing there. The median income. Now, I put average and median. Everybody know the difference between median and average? Average is you take all of them, add them together, and divide by the total. That's the average. The median is half make higher, half make lower. So when you switch over to the median from average, look what happens. The medians start to go up. So what that tells you is there are some smaller businesses that make a lot of money because they're skewing it. They're skewing the medians up. And you look at people who are self-employed, the average income or median income is $51,000 for an incorporated firm and about $26,000 for unincorporated. But again, that's still relatively small. So small businesses are by themselves small. The average number of employees per firm that actually employs people. Now, this is not a startup because oftentimes things get confused. You'll hear startups create over 60% of all new jobs, which is true. If you create one job, though, that's part of that. If the employer firms that are out there average about 22 employees, but remember, only 2 in 10 ever employ anybody. So the employer firms that are out there, now startups don't employ that much. We'll see here in just a minute how many startups. And the other problem about startups, the failure rate of these firms is fairly high. So what happens to those jobs? Yeah, they create 2/3 of all the new jobs that are created, but what happens to them? A lot of them go away because the businesses go away. So we need and that's one of the things we want to look at when we get over here to how to support them. We want to keep these businesses in business. We don't want our businesses failing. COVID took a terrible toll on small businesses. And we don't want to have that happen again. And so what we want to do is try to build the ecosystems. We want to try to build the support systems that go in place to keep these from failing ever again. We don't want to see this happen again. I don't know about your area, but our area is fairly much recovered. The 22, and a lot of the data I'm using is 21, and there's some 20 data in here. And 20 was obviously right in the height of COVID. 21, we're seeing the effects were starting to come over. The 22 should be a whole lot better as we go into 2022 in here. So what do the businesses do for you in your community? To me, this is critical. They provide economic renewal. Think about the businesses during COVID that did go out of business. What's happened to those spaces? In my community, most of them have what? Somebody else in them now. They've been renewed. The newer are coming in. And by the way, businesses go through life cycles. Businesses come, businesses go. If you don't have new ones coming in, then you lose that. You lose that renewal that takes place. And so I would encourage you to really think about what you can do as a community to help these businesses, particularly when we get down to that part of this. They do provide local jobs, and I want to show you something. This is a critical piece of information for you. 80% of all the new jobs in your community are created by the existing businesses, not new ones, not attraction, by the existing businesses in your community. The biggest bang for your buck is coming from supporting the businesses you already have. If you already have them, that's where you need to put your support. Because that's where, if you're looking at jobs, which most people are, that's where they come from. So you look at this. They provide business owner income. A lot of people forget about this because if you talk to most economic developers, they talk about jobs, 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 jobs. I don't know about your community, but when we're trying to do something and we need money for the community to maybe to expand the library or whatever you're going to do, where do you normally go? If you got a raffle, where do you go to get the stuff to raffle off? The retirees and what? The business owners. The business owners are oftentimes the biggest contributors back into the community as far as the wealth. They return their wealth to your community. Yes, they provide jobs and the job people who are employed also, but I know in my community, we always go to the businesses, the business owners, and they're small. Every business in my community is small. It's the business owners who push it back in there. And if they're successful, then they're much more willing to help and plow back into the community. And we have some business owners that really do support our community. Anything the community needs to have done, they'll step up to the plate. Well, they can't do that if they're not successful in their business. The small businesses also provide the property taxes, ad valorem taxes, and your sales tax. They provide the niche goods and services. Small businesses also in your communities provide oftentimes goods and services nobody else can. Nobody else will. The big guys can afford to do it. You go, it's like getting my pants altered. I'm so short that I never can buy a pair of pants that fit. Everything has to be cut. Where do you go to get your pants altered? Walmart? No, you don't go to Walmart. Costco? No. Sears? If there was a Sears. You know where I go? I go to this little lady who owns a Oriental store. She does alterations and she sells Oriental products like rices and, I think she may be Chinese. I'm not sure what, but she sells those types of products. It's a little store. I don't know, Sue, probably what, maybe 400 square feet? She does fine. So where do you go to get your pants altered? The small business. I don't go to the Walmarts. So that's what I'm talking about, filling those niche markets that are there. And they provide the economic stability. Because the more business you have, we're talking about the whole plan of this whole conference today was to not have the impact of COVID ever again, to at least be prepared for something like that. The wider range of small businesses, the more you have, the more stable the economy is. Because you can lose a big one. You can lose a big box store, you can lose a manufacturer, you can lose a big one. But to lose all the small ones at one time is very rare. Now, you may lose some, but many of them will stay. So that provides the stability there. Here are the business start rates. I've got the startup rate nationally, and in Texas. This is for every 100,000 adults you have in your population. This is the number of businesses that are average started each month. So if you have 100,000 population in your area, for every 100,000 adults, you can expect about 380 businesses a year. And that's about the same as nationwide. Texas used to be a whole lot better than that, but it's not. About 80% of those in Texas are what we call opportunities. These are brand new ideas. About the survival rate for 1 year is about 80% in Texas. The number of employees, now this is of startups that actually, not employer firms, but just the startups that actually employ anybody, is about 5.6. Texas is doing a little bit better in those. How are you doing? I've got your 3 counties here, and I extrapolate the populations. These are 2020 populations. In 2020, Cook had about 41,000 or 42,000, Fannin about 36,000, and Grayson had about 135,000 adult population. And I pulled that off the U.S. Census. So per year in Cook County, you can figure on about 1,452 businesses starting. You say 1,452. Remember, half of those are probably home-based. You never know about them. Somebody started selling something on Etsy or eBay or something like that on that one. Of those 1,452, 276 of them may be employers in Cook County. You can look down Fannin County and you look down Grayson County. So this is your replacement rate. And this is assuming that your county is doing the same thing Texas does. The website I got this off of used to do it at the county level. They quit. They just now do it by the state level. So your county may do better than this or it may do worse than this as far as compared to the rest of the state. But if you're doing just what the state of Texas does, this is about what you can expect. Here's something else I pulled out. Of these small businesses that you do have in your county, what economic impact do they have? And I'm looking at jobs primarily. And what we have in Cook County, the estimated number of jobs and the size of the business. The self-employed for instance, Cook County self-employed make up about 14% of all the businesses in your county. Percent of jobs about 1.46. Because if you're self-employed, who are the accountant? The employee. The business owner is the employee. You can go right down it. Where are most of the jobs coming from? This is critical that you look at it. And it's the same in every county. It's the same in Texas. It's the same in my county. If you look at jobs, who produces the most jobs? What size? 10 to 99. They're not the most number of businesses, but they produce the most number of jobs. We call those stage 2. And if you want to really focus on really growing your economy, that's where you need to focus on those stage 2 businesses. And I don't care which county you're in. Now, because Grayson now has the big manufacturing firm coming in, that's probably going to change for you because this is 2020 data. And it's also COVID data. And this is a little bit misleading because this is looking at what they call establishments. We won't get into that, but establishments different than a small business. But it gives you an idea that it's consistent throughout the United States. The 10 to 99 employee business is the one that employs the most people. Who are entrepreneurs? Are y'all entrepreneurs? I have a test. You can't be an academic and not give a test. So I'm going to test your entrepreneurial prowess. It's a 4-question test. And there's profit in answering the questions. All right, you ready? This goes to the first person who answers the question correctly. Where does corn oil come from? Where does corn oil come from? Who said it? Where did I hear corn? Good answer. You may be an entrepreneur. We'll find out here in a minute. Question number 2. Where does olive oil come from? I heard it right here. Olive. You're really good. Question number 3. There's only 2 go. Where does cottonseed oil come from? Cottonseed. Heard it over here. And here's the last question that separates everybody. Where does baby oil come from? What? I will take petroleum, Walmart, anything. Baby oil comes from Walmart. And what you learn as an entrepreneur, you make money by solving problems. And the more difficult the problem, the more money you make. It's a simple concept. So we have an entrepreneur back here who solved the more difficult problem. But then we had the folks who solved the problem. And that's what entrepreneurs do, and that's what small business owners do, is they solve the problems. How many of you have the lemonade stand? Anybody have seen the lemonade stands throughout the nation? That's assuming that your city government doesn't shut them down for not having a permit. Huh? Yeah. This was a very popular thing. And by the way, what we found out from our research, entrepreneurship starts early. How many of you had a job when you were a kid or had a business? Cut lawns, babysat, whatever. That is the precursor of entrepreneurship. We find that very consistent. People who did that oftentimes start their own businesses. So they start early. By the way, one of the things you can do is start teaching entrepreneurship early. There is actually approved curriculum for entrepreneurs from pre-K all the way through college. So you can even start with your kindergartners teaching them how to start a business and run it all the way up through the university level. There's a couple of school systems in Dallas that have done some unbelievable things with their high school students. You can do it. You can start that. You can start training that up front. What does an entrepreneur look like? And by the way, these are kind of common characteristics, but what we've actually found, there's no really characteristic to an entrepreneur. Everybody tries to find a personality trait or something. It's not there. There's no common personality trait or anything that separates entrepreneurs from non-entrepreneurs, or business owners from non-business owners. So what are some of the things we have observed? They're driven. Business owners driven. And how many of you own a business? How many hours a day does it take to run that business? I've had mine too. That's why I don't have one now. I'm thinking about retirement. If you don't have commitment to it, it's very difficult. And how long does it take you, if ever, to get your business to where you can walk away from it for a period of time? You know, most people, that's what they would like to do, is eventually get their business to a point where you could walk away from it at some point. That's very difficult to do, and we know that. And so when you begin, I've had people, particularly us, retirees, well, I'm going to open a little restaurant and retire. Let me tell you, there's nothing more demanding than a restaurant. You open a restaurant, you're not retiring. Unless you're never open. One of the two. They do tend to be independent. Now, by the way, causes some problems. We'll see that in a minute. Because they are measured risk takers, means that entrepreneurs, we found out, are not crazy people. They don't just run out and just start the wildest thing. They actually weigh the pros and cons. They're not wild risk takers. And I bet everyone that owns a business in here, you thought through it. You weren't. Now, when you started, and I would probably ask, how's your business day versus the day you started? It's probably not even the same. There's a lot of things different. There's a lot of things, if you went back, I could do differently. You would. Things that you probably wouldn't do differently if you could. But you thought it was worth the risk. One of the best things you can have is a spouse that will support you. One of the hardest businesses is to build is one you try to build when your spouses keep shooting at you from the foxhole. So we like to see that. One of the things about being independent, oftentimes business owners are very reluctant to seek advice. I can do it myself, and nobody can do it better than I can. And so it's very often, and it takes a real smart entrepreneur to finally realize there's a skill set that I may not have. I'm going to either do one of two things. I'm either going to learn that skill set, or I'm going to hire somebody that's got it. But I realize I can't do everything myself. And there comes, we'll talk about it in a minute, and this is where the community can step in, because there's points in a business growth where you hit inflection points. If you can't move that inflection point, oftentimes the business will stymie. If you can move through the inflection point, then you can get through it. And one of them is that turning over, starting to get help into the business. All business owners are short on resources. I don't care if they're starting or successful. You'll always tell you, it's kind of like a farmer. I know you got big agriculture. Have you ever a farmer that ever said, I had enough rain? It's always short on resources, particularly rain, and the prices are never where they're supposed to be. By the way, farming is probably one of the most difficult entrepreneurial endeavors you can take, because almost all of the critical things that can either break you or make you are out of your control. You can't control prices. You can't control weather. You can't, you think about that. If you have run a business where a lot of the main things impacting your business are out of your control, that's tough. Farmers are my heroes and ranchers, because so much is out of their control. Classification of entrepreneurs. This is another thing you need to know about in your community, because community has several different kinds. We have what we call survival entrepreneurs. Those are the people who start a business because they can't find a job. And we had a lot of that during COVID. And once they get a job and up and running, then all of a sudden the business will go away. We have those folks. We have the lifestyle entrepreneurs, which most people fall into. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with either one of these, any of these classifications. Lifestyle entrepreneurs are those people who want to create a lifestyle for themselves and maybe their families. Oftentimes you'll find the local restaurant is, you'll see a family owned where they got 2 or 3 generations working there. They're doing well. That's a lifestyle type business. Not a thing wrong with that. And a lot of businesses are like that. But as far as growing them into the next Amazon, it isn't going to happen. We have what we call the serial entrepreneurs, and I love them. They're my favorite, because those are the people, and you know them, they start one business, sell it off, start another business, sell it off. They may have 2 or 3 going at the same time. Some of you may be serial entrepreneurs. And if you got some of those in your community, you got some really neat stuff in your community, neat folks in there. Then we have the growth entrepreneurs. These are the ones that have, they want to build the Amazon. They may not ever get there, but they may want to build it. And we found out they have some characteristics. First of all, they want to grow. Lifestyle entrepreneurs oftentimes don't want to grow. As long as I've got a nice lifestyle for my family, I don't need to grow. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just like the person who chooses entrepreneurship just to fill the gap between employment. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And we want to support all of those. Then we have the growth. Have a history of growth, and they have a scalable idea. A scalable idea means I can just push it out to more and more customers. That's one of the problems with the local brick and mortar type business. The small ones, you're limited to your customer base to where you live. That's why the internet has become such an important means of scaling a business. You can go, your customers then are worldwide. What do you need to be successful? And this is another thing. As you're trying to help these businesses, think through this. Here's what you're trying to do to help these businesses be successful. This is what they need. They need a solid business idea. I got the question just not too long ago. It said, what's the number one reason businesses fail? Anybody know? Do what? What? Nope. 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 What? You're getting close. But I wouldn't do that to my entrepreneurs. No. Crappy idea. The idea is just bad. You can't turn a bad idea into a good one. And one of the things that we try to do on the academic side is help people evaluate ideas so you don't start a crappy one. Because if you can't fix a bad idea. Yeah. But it's a good idea. Everybody needed it. I didn't say it weird. It's like the franchise now that cleans up crime scenes. You think that's a bad idea? No, it's a great idea. I wouldn't want to do it, but it's a great idea. Nothing wrong with the idea. But just bad ideas. Financing does come into it. Now, where do most entrepreneurs get their financing? From family, friends, and fools. When I got started out years ago in real estate, I bought some duplexes. Where did I get my money? From my mother. But when we went into that business idea, and I suggest this, we went in as a business. And so I paid a return, and when your parent asks you, do you have any more you want to invest in? Because I want to make money. Then you know you've done it right. And she did. You need networks and contacts as a business to make it successful. You need mentors. You need, again, adequate customers. Another question I used to ask students, where does revenue come from? Customers. I mean, people think it's something, this is rocket science. No. The revenue for your business comes from customers. If you don't have any customers, guess what? You don't have any revenue. You probably don't have any revenue because what? You have a crappy idea because you don't have any customers. You need business skills. If you notice, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, particularly through financial management. There's 7 different categories. I told you, academics actually have a purpose in life. Is we've looked at businesses and how they grow and where they stick. Here are 7 areas that we found where businesses that are growing oftentimes get stuck. They can't move through it. They can't move through getting more customers. They can't move through strategic vision. As a company grows, that becomes more important. You can't run one by the seat of your pants forever. People management becomes, and if you'd ask most small, I want to ask these guys, one of my biggest problems, small business owner, is keeping employees. And then the ones I got, motivating them. People management, operational improvement. The operations, as a business grows, you've got to put things in order. The formal systems. Eventually, you're going to have to have an HR department. If you get up 300 or 400 employees, you're going to have an HR department somewhere along the way. And if you don't put one in, then you're going to fail. Financial management, and then technologies and website. You need that. Here's why they fail: weak model, idea, product, or service. Ignoring weaknesses. An entrepreneur has something that they just don't know, and they don't feel it. They don't learn. They just ignore the weakness in the business. Ideas only, no production. You can talk all you want to, but you got to do something. Lack of customers, poor business skills, inadequate financing, and lack of motivation of the owner. So how can you help as a community? This is where we want to end on this. How can you help? One, first you got to do is realize what you can't do. As a community, you cannot do 2 things. You cannot create a business. You can't create an entrepreneur. They either they are or they're not. And the second one is you can't do it for them. If the person who wants to start a business is not willing to do the effort, put the effort in to start, you can't do it for them. They've got to do those 2 things. If they are wanting to start the business and willing to put in the effort, and they're the entrepreneur, then here's how you can start helping. What can you do? You can start building the ecosystem. That's where you want to start. Make it easy to start a business. Stable government. That's one of the problems my community had for a long time. The city government was always in turmoil. Reasonable regulation, taxes, adequate infrastructure. They talked about infrastructure a second ago. You got to have those. You got to have those kind of things. Let me ask you a question. If I wanted to start a business in your community, how many places would I have to go to get all the permits? If you tell me more than one, you need to really look at that real closely. You should have only one place that you need to go. That's making business easy to start. I saw Victoria in there. Since I'm with the University of Houston, Victoria, even though I live out in West Kerr County, A long time ago, they have a municipal building downtown, and all of the major permit holders are in that building. So if they have somebody coming in wanting to start a business, they can get every one of them together in a conference room and get the permits hammered out in one place. So I'm just telling you, make it easy. You can provide business education. You can help with financing. We'll talk about that a little bit. Help connect business owners with resources. You can become a resource connector if this is. You can employ the business development tools. There's a whole bunch of different tools out there that you can do. Make introductions and connections. Just look down here. Exposure to community websites. List of keyword searchable businesses. List of home-based businesses that you have in your community. What you're trying to do is promote the businesses in your area. Remember, I told you most of your new jobs come from your existing businesses. So I'm going to go all the way down to the business retention and BR&E, best business retention and expansion. You can probably put, if you want to really get the most bang for your buck, that's where you need to go. Have a good business retention expansion program in place. And I know some of the counties up here are trying to do that. You need to have that. You need to have access to broadband, particularly if you want the remote worker. You don't have broadband, you're not going to get any remote workers. Matter of fact, you're not even going to get retirees because everybody wants to keep in touch with Facebook to their grandchildren. And almost everybody in my community, unfortunately, now starts ordering from Amazon. That's probably the biggest hurt on some of our local businesses is the ordering from Amazon. So what can you do? You can do incentives. And you get into smaller towns, you can incentivize things like retail. Bigger towns, they won't even talk to you about incentivizing retail. Depends on, that's just one of those community-based, whatever size of your community. Venture capital, business angels. I know up here in this part of the world you have business angels. Venture capitalists, most communities, my community didn't know what a venture capitalist is, much less have any of them. They wouldn't have anything like that. You have to be in a bigger area. Community banks, community programs. My county has now started a virtual entrepreneurship center. It's called Kerr County Edge, or Kerr Edge, and it's a virtual entrepreneurship support system center where you can go on it. West Texas A&M probably has, up in Amarillo, probably has one of the best incubator services and business support systems in the country. It's great. Department of Agriculture is another major source. Most people, both at the state and federal level, both the state and federal have, particularly for rural communities, have assistance, business assistance for rural communities, not just for agriculture, but for any kind of business in rural communities. The most underutilized resource that you may have in the entire United States is the SBDC, Small Business Development Center, is available in every community in the United States and all of its territories. Most every service it has is prepaid by the taxpayer, which means the entrepreneur doesn't have to pay a fee. You people always say it's free. You know, there ain't nothing free, right, in this world? They're prepaid by you and I, the taxpayer. The SBA, Small Business Administration, that's where a lot of the loan guarantees come through, is the SBA. Another. CORE, do y'all have a CORE chapter up here? It's one of the things we're looking at in my community. Low community colleges, I know you've got some very strong community colleges and universities up here that can partner with you. You've got that. Workforce Solutions of Texoma, where the State Workforce Commission is very, very helpful to a lot of folks. Sometimes this could be a little onerous because it's state. But if you, how many of you worked with the State Workforce Commission? Anybody work through them? Yeah, they're not, you can get some stuff done through it. Land grant institutions. Down around Fredericksburg is wine country. There's more wineries than you can count. Most of the information to build those wines came from Texas A&M through their agriculture support, because they support rural, and they've done the research on the best way to develop wine. Those hundreds and hundreds of wineries wouldn't exist without Texas A&M, which is the land grant institution on the other side. So they'll help you too. Incubators, accelerators. The difference between an incubator takes infant businesses and helps them grow. Accelerator takes businesses that are already up and running and makes them better. It's the only difference between the two of them. Co-work space, somebody mentioned, I saw on one of the slides, co-work special. Special community sponsored development, often through your chamber. That's one of the things my chamber is trying to do. Research institutions, Texas Workforce Commission, Governor's Office. A lot of you work with the Governor's Office, and they're supportive too, aren't they? I mean, on all this. Your regional EDCs and regional COGs. So what's the conclusion? All small businesses are unique and all communities are unique. Small businesses have value, but you need to have realistic expectations. Matter of fact, because what's a realistic expectation? Most small businesses will always be what? Small. Now they may be very vital to an individual family, and that's real important. But as far as building your community, probably not that much. They'll have impact, but not that much impact. The community can help, but you can't do it for them. And what the best thing is when some business is successful, that's exciting. When you actually have someone who's doing well. And even though my little community is very small, there are 3 or 4 businesses that are doing super well. One is called Broken Arrow Ranch, and they sell exotic game animal meat all over the world. Another one is called Woodberries. They do essentially the same thing, and they're side by side. They export a whole lot more than they sell ever. They got a little store in the town, but nobody ever goes in there. But the amount of meat, exotic. So if you need some Axis meat, you need something, they'll give it to you. And I've noticed more and more on restaurants you'll see supplied by Broken Arrow Ranch. That's coming out of that area. So we do have those kind of businesses out there.